From TLDR, this is too long, didn't read.
That was a brilliant intro. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Ben.
no worries. Sound a bit different to Jack.
So, well, you want to start? Just fill us in on what's just happened.
Well, I was going to ask you to do that. I mean, what's been going? I mean, basically, I've just been.
Yeah, who takes Jack's role in this situation?
We'll do a dual.
Oh, yeah,
we'll do
for
a
those
dual
of
role.
you,
We'll sort each other out.
we're both co-hosting.
Yes.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, exactly.
But we should probably just clear up for like the people who are listening.
Yes.
Obviously, those of you who don't know, Jack is on holiday,
Yeah.
and that is why. That's basically just why he's not here. That's about it.
Yes,
Really.
it's just us
so
two.
It's just me and Ben this time.
Yeah.
I'm Zach, by the way. It's the same guy from like the first ones. I don't know if you listened
Yes.
to them. It's fine if you didn't.
So it's like James
but yeah,
May
so
and
Zach
Richard
and Ben.
Hammond. We're doing it without Jeremy.
Let's not massage that ego any further. Let's
exactly. Well, so we're just recording pretty much an hour after we found out that the programme wasn't legal.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, unlawful. It sounds like a stronger term. Do you know what I mean? Than not legal. Unlawful sounds pretty like condemnatory.
I'm trying to find out like a neutral way of putting that. Like,
I think you're quoting a judge as pretty neutral.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so
he was told it just
both
wasn't on.
Justiciable. Yeah. What do you think? What was your prediction like pre?
Yeah. Well, I think in one of the episodes I said I think I agree. I think I'm right in saying that I agreed with you and Jack in that I didn't think that the judges would. Well, certainly I didn't think that they'd say it was unlawful. It is the only prediction I think I made, but I could be proven wrong. But I think that's what I said, and that is what I thought. So I didn't think they'd come back with this. But
so we were both wrong,
wrong.
basically. That's
I think every prediction I've made on this podcast so far has been proven to be just not right. So
that's a good metric of how actually competent political journalists we are.
Yeah.
How crap our predictions
not good.
are.
So I think that's making us more like proper political journalists, getting everything wrong.
Yeah, that's true, actually. In a way, we are keeping up with the best of them.
So no,
yeah, I was wrong as well.
Do you thought the same?
I thought it was going to be justiciable. Yeah, justiciable, but I thought they would deem it lawful. I thought they would say I think that would have been quite a nice cop out for them. Because I think that like the worst outcome probably would have been. I think we should really thank our lucky stars. It was a unanimous verdict.
Yes, that was the other big thing.
The worst outcome would have been 7 of them going it's unlawful and 4 of them saying lawful. We would end up with a whole sort of American political judges nonsense.
Yeah,
thing.
But that's why they had all 11, wasn't it? Because they originally said they'd have all 11 Supreme Court justices sitting for this one, so that no matter how it goes, you couldn't make the argument that if it was a different set of judges sat there, there'd have been a different verdict.
Yeah.
But now that's been taken to its complete logical conclusion, which is that all 11 were sitting and all 11 have said the exact same, have ruled the exact same way. So there's no ambiguity
I'm actually
here.
that's the thing I'm most grateful for.
Yes.
I'm just so grateful that they've actually all ruled the same way, because otherwise I could just see a sort of weird group of hardcore Brexiteers starting analysing their political leanings and all that. You know what I mean? And it just would have taken it in a whole new direction. Yeah. Very American.
But now
we've
got all of the conversation from party leaders and journalists saying, well, what happens now? So we both got the prediction wrong of how they've done it. So we've spoken sort of briefly about that.
Well done us,
yeah. Congrats. So yeah, we got that wrong. But now, what happens now? That's the next question. What happens here? What happens now?
Yeah, what do you think happens now?
Well,
this is how we're going to do it. Someone's going to introduce it, and then the other one's going to go.
Yeah,
you go
exactly.
first.
Yeah. Without
no Jack to moderate.
Mediate.
Yeah,
this is going to be a car crash. No, it's fine.
You go
yes,
first.
Exactly. Right. Well, I've been reading some bits and bobs from sort of political journalists and what people, sort of party leaders, and there was the
proper political journalists.
Yeah, and Corbyn's thumbs up at the party conference. That
was cheeky.
That was a little cheeky thumbs up. So there was that, but no, I don't know. I can't remember who said it, but it was this hasn't happened before, which I don't think I need a journalist to back that up. I think we can pretty confidently say this hasn't happened before. So what happens now is a really difficult thing to sort of talk about. I think in the last one, did you listen to the last podcast?
I actually, criminally, I did not
Okay,
listen to it. I had terrible internet. I was on holiday, as Jack is
Well,
now.
I've got some questions for you that are sort of not to do with politics that I'll ask at the very end. So you're going to find them very weird because you don't know what they're about. But yeah, so there's that. But in the last one, someone said something about Boris Johnson going to prison and asked us what we thought about that, to which I said, yeah, that is too far.
That's not happening.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And I think I was cautious about treating it as a joke, just in case they're being serious. But then I read in the comments on that the guy who actually sent it in, I think, said, yeah, that was just a joke. So I think he was joking, but
no, there were
that's
no
not going to
grounds.
happen. But
Yeah, there are no grounds for
no,
prison
absolutely
stuff.
not. But the Parliament is said that it's officially it wasn't prorogued. It was is what people are saying at the minute, is that it wasn't officially prorogued because it was deemed unlawful. So Parliament can just go and sit now. So they can do whatever they want. They can go back to Parliament. And Bercow has said something similar. He said, right, we need to get everyone back as quickly as possible.
Bercow.
Yes, yeah. Wait, were you correct in my pronunciation?
I was slightly there. Bercow is a new one.
Right.
But yeah. I saw the same thing. It's all going to be quite mental.
So definitely, just to sort of answer that question, they're definitely going to go back to Parliament as quickly as possible. That's the first sort of implication of this. Anything else, I have no idea. What do you think?
I think it's quite just like a funny thing. It doesn't sound like it makes sense just to say that like Parliament wasn't prorogued, because you know what I mean, like almost philosophically, like just to say like nah, that didn't happen.
Yeah,
the clock went back. We're just ignoring it, but then it never happened.
Like a double think. Like yeah.
It's weird. But I don't know what happens. I think the interesting question is, I don't think Boris will resign.
Yeah.
But I think despite everyone going, please resign.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll resign.
No.
I think he's going to have to be forced out. But I think the interesting question is whether or not Cummings will resign.
That was the other big one, yeah.
Yeah, even Farage. You used to see that tweet by Farage?
I saw Farage's tweet, saying that Cummings should go.
And yeah, he was saying, that was a terrible political decision. Cummings has to go at this point. And loads of, according to better connected political journalists than ourselves, a lot of Tory MPs have also been saying this is it. Like Cummings has to go at this point. But I do think in normal political times, like you would expect the Prime Minister to resign from this sort of thing. I mean, obviously the circumstances are different, but you would, like, if the Supreme Court ruled something that the Prime Minister did unlawful, it just seems like almost not even like a UK political norm, but like an international political norm that you do something illegal, you resign.
It's a scandal, isn't it? I mean, it's not a great comparison, but the only thing that comes even close to this would be maybe Watergate, because that was something where the president in office broke the law. So that was something, but that was a lot. I want to make this very clear now that was a lot worse than what's currently happened. So that's why it's not a great analogy, which I want to make very clear. And obviously Nixon fell on his sword for that. But I don't know. I think at the minute, the times that we're going through at the minute, I think it's prime ministers are managing to withstand a lot more. So Theresa May, I mean, how many times during her premiership did everyone expect her to resign over something, and she managed to continue? And I think that's sort of a result of how turbulent the times are, and how after, because it just seems to be scandal after scandal, well, not scandal, but things that have never happened, unprecedented event after unprecedented event, like Theresa May losing the withdrawal agreement so many times, and them going, right, well, she's lost, she's lost by the biggest margin of any government ever, she should go, didn't go, and then a few other bits and bobs. Oh, was that when she did go? But there was certainly things before that.
Yeah, no, she, as everyone said, she was politically invincible. It looked like. I mean, not invincible because she was just getting battered, but like, you know what I mean? She stayed in office for a really long time.
Is that just unique to Theresa May, or is that the way that things are going now? And I suppose that's what we're going to find out, whether it's just because the turbulent times we're in, political leaders are being given more slack with these sorts of things, or whether that was just a one-off with Theresa May.
I think it's probably a little bit of the sort of newfound Brexit turbulence.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely, that's the same reason that both Boris and Theresa have in part been able to weather their political storms. But I think for Boris, that's what we talked about, like, the last time I was on the podcast, the whole fixed term Parliament Act thing.
Yeah.
And like the fact that, he can always turn around to Parliament and just be like, hey, listen guys, if you don't like me, if you really think I've done everything that bad, I don't even have the power to dissolve Parliament at this point. You guys have got to tell me to
exactly. Exactly.
And so he can just turn around and point to Parliament's hypocrisy and be like, yeah, they're all having a go at me, and sure, I've technically done something illegal. Well, I can't believe I'm saying that so willy-nilly, but yeah, I've done something illegal. Ooh. Yeah. But you guys still are letting me stay in. So,
well, that's it. And
it's the blame is shared in that sense.
This is the thing that I think is sort of, well, it all comes back to the Fixed Term Parliament Act. It seems like all roads lead to the Fixed Term Parliament Act at the minute, which is that You're completely right, which is that the Prime Minister, it's not up to them anymore when the election's called. They needed a 2/3 majority to call an election and to dissolve Parliament for that reason. And Johnson tried that and didn't get it.
Yeah, I think there was one other thing, because I've been thinking about that, and I agree. I think this is obviously a terrible piece of legislation, and the constitutional consequences haven't really been thought through. I'm actually going to plug someone else's podcast here. There's Talking Politics. There's like a banging episode on it. Talking Politics, David Runciman. The podcast is called Talking Politics. Yeah. There's a great episode on basically the whole Fixed Term Parliament Act. It's worth listening to. Anyway, the point is that I think there's another thing. I think that actually the rise of the decline of the two-party system has meant that we end up in more parliamentary arithmetic impasses.
Yeah, this is it.
Because it used to basically be, you'd go, I want no deal, and then Labour would pick a side that is effectively, we don't want no deal. Yeah. And those Tory MPs that disagreed would just join Labour. Yeah. And just for that one vote, and that would be it.
Yeah.
But now, obviously, once you've got, the Lib Dems, there are so many different options that are available to MPs that you cannot guarantee a majority for any one thing.
No, and that's it. Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. And I think that we stuck it out as a political system. The UK stuck it out as a political system because it was sort of guaranteed to have a two-party system. Like the Parliament obviously works on simple majorities, and you're almost guaranteed successful simple majorities if you have a two-party system. Obviously, because whoever's not voting, you know what I mean? Basically, there are only going to be two opinions in that situation. Yeah.
And this, and I think that you're right on that. And the thing is with Brexit, and I think I've said this before, is that you don't have, and I think this is what you're saying in this anyway, but it's that you don't have a simple majority for any Brexit option. Everybody, because there aren't just two. It's not just Leave and Remain, and you'd expect every MP to back one of those two, which by definition would mean one of them has to have a simple majority, unless it's almost exactly 50-50, which statistically it wouldn't be. You've got loads of different options. You've got loads of different ways to leave. I mean, even just even if you just look at it as Remain, a deal, and no deal, that's 3. And that means that,
that is 3. That's good counting from us.
Yeah, exactly. Well done. Mathematicians too. But no, even if there were just 3, it means it's very difficult for one of those to get a sort of a majority, because you fracture even if it's around 50-50, maybe a bit less, Leave and Remain, the Leave vote in Parliament would be fractured, because some people would want a deal, some people won't, and it just means that you're not going to get anything through, and that is just something that Parliament, I can't see them getting. Can you see them getting around this?
No, I also think, firstly, I think this was pretty prescient. We did a video on why no deal is inevitable, and it's sort of, it was a while ago, it sort of hinges on this same point, but I think that the parliamentarians really haven't learned a lesson here, which is that they're going to have to, in some sense, compromise. Parliamentarians aren't used to compromise for the reasons we've just described. They've normally been given things where there's 2 options, and you pick hard on one of them, and now ultimately they're going to have to order their preferences essentially, and try and compromise, knowing that if they all get stuck in this paralysis forever, they'll likely get an outcome that they really don't like.
But the issue is that they don't want to compromise because this is such a big thing for the country.
It's true.
So they will have something in their mind, and they'll think, right, if I think I've said this before as well, which is that if you absolutely want a no deal, you've advocated your whole life for no deal, you are Eurosceptic through and through, and you want a no deal, you're not going to compromise on that. You're not then going to go, right, at this big sort of turning point for the country, after the biggest democratic vote in our history, all of this, and I want a no deal. I'm not then going to go, we'll kind of go for a bit of a deal. Like, you're not going to turn around and go that. You're going to absolutely try your hardest to go for a no deal. And I think that most parliamentarians are in that mindset, which is that they have a vision in their mind of what they want, and they will not compromise on that. And there's debate. We can certainly debate whether that's right or not, whether they should stick to their principles and stick to their guns and just keep going until they get what they want through, or whether it's more sort of sensible to compromise on those principles and compromise with colleagues to get something through.
Yeah, well, I think this is another thing. This contributes to that thing we were talking about, the fact that Parliament is unable to get a majority, obviously, but it's the collapse of party loyalty, like the fact that Brexit has taken such a strong hold of most parliamentarian psyches that they are just willing to completely disregard the party whip, which means you now have. I'll tell
you what, it's a bad time to be a party whip.
It really is not a good time to be a party whip. No. But it does mean that you have now this sort of weird floating, not undecided, but floating group of MPs who will basically they just don't follow the party whip. So as we all know, like a government majority at the moment is futile. It's token. It doesn't really hold.
Which is why I said when the Conservative MPs were kicked out, it's not going to make that much of a difference, because it's not like the Conservatives are sat there listening to the whip loads at the minute. It's not like they're gonna, when they were in the party, they were doing what they were told by the whips on Brexit matters. They're still going to do the same, which is just not listen to it and do what they want, which is kind of what's happened this year with not only Conservatives but Labour MPs as well. So yeah.
Well, do you think on this thing? Do you think this is? Because I'm not sure whether or not that this sort of parliamentary impasse will be a function of British politics going into the future. Because of, I think, in part because of the fact that we're now, it looks like we're definitely going to be a 3-party system, if not a 4-party system. I don't know if that will hold, but it looks like it, doesn't it? I mean, on the polling, but it depends, if an election happens after the 31st of October, and polling is to be believed, which, take that with a pinch of salt, then, you could end up with the Brexit Party with a significant number of seats, the Lib Dems with a significant, we should expect, whatever happens, the Lib Dems to get a significant number of seats. And then Labour and obviously the Conservatives to also get a significant number of seats, and we will end up more as a 4-party system. And do you think that this parliamentary impasse will be a function of that, or whether it's just a temporary Brexit shtick?
I personally think, it depends how far in the future we're looking. In the next election, I agree with you. I agree that it's going to be a 3-4-party election. The real question that I have, and why I'm not going to give a definitive answer to this, I might have done in the past, but if I have, I'm rethinking it, which is that just because a party gets a lot of votes doesn't mean they get a lot of seats, and we've seen that in the past, and I would expect the same again, especially from the Lib Dems and Brexit Party. Maybe the SNP might not, because they've got a concentration. They by definition have a concentration
I forgot the SNP, of course,
the vote. Yeah, so the SNP would have a concentration of the vote in Scotland anyway, because that's where their seats are. That's where they can contest. So I would expect the SNP to do well. The Lib Dems might just get a lot of votes across the country, but not concentrated in enough seats to actually win very many. And I'd expect the same from the Brexit
But you
Party.
Really don't think? I really think that the Lib Dems with I would be. When they were at their own conference, that the very hyper optimistic figure was 200 seats, which is, let's just put that aside. That doesn't sound 200. Yeah, that was the highest figure given at conference, it's just too high. But really, I think they can absolutely guarantee themselves a minimum of 50 seats. They've done insanely well. They've done better than polling in all the actual elections.
2010 numbers. 2010 they had what, 56?
Yeah.
Like that?
So, but that was, I think, 2010. Obviously, they started off. They made their inroads into the 2-party system, and then obviously completely fucked up with the whole tuition fees thing. But assuming that they learn their lessons, I think this could be their stepping stone to being the 3rd party, essentially.
Yeah, but it's whether, I think the difference is with 2010 is that the leader was one of them, and you had Cleggmania, and you had a broad portion of the country, irrespective of party lines, liking sort of the leader figure, which is
True.
a big
they don't have the same
reason to vote.
Same quality of, let's be honest, quality of leader as they did in Clegg.
I don't know how Jo Swinson is as a leader, but and I'm not going to comment on that. But the sort of
I should qualify. I didn't mean that as exactly. I meant that in
the media personality around Jo Swinson isn't what Nick Clegg's was in 2010. So there isn't the media following of Jo Swinson as there was with Nick Clegg. So there's that as one, and number two is that I think you're right. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to vote for the Lib Dems now based on a Remain line. But my real sort of question is that going to be concentrated enough in certain seats? Is that Remain vote going to be concentrated enough in certain seats to give them, the concentrated vote that will give them seats? And I'm not 100% that will be the case. They might get a massive amount of votes. I have no doubts that there's a very good chance they're going to get a huge amount of votes. It is simply whether it's going to be concentrated in enough seats to be able to get that to get enough seats. And I don't know. I'm not saying that that's not the case. I'm just saying it's something
I appreciate
to sort of think about.
Should we go for prediction? What's your predicted number of Lib Dem seats in the inevitable upcoming election?
Predicted number of Lib Dem. That's a really tough question.
You can't just your way through the whole thing. You can't just
Yeah, I can. Well, okay. I'll give a right. You got to bear in mind this is pretty uninformed, and I will just give you a
politics
figure, and
student,
we'll see
Ben.
where that goes. Yes. Okay. I will go with 30.
Okay, and I'm going to go for above 50.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Right. Well, give me a number and we'll see who gets closer.
All right, so why don't you say 30? I'll say 60.
Price is right. Price is right
Awesome.
rules.
So we got predictions going. The nice little predictions competition.
Yes.
So you're going 30. I'm gonna.
Whoever wins gets to introduce the next episode. Jack's not
Oh
in.
yay. All right. I'll go
Okay.
60. I'm gonna go 60.
60. Okay. Price is right rules. We'll see who
I
wins.
think I've got an easy. If they do well, Ben, I'm taking that introduction, dude. That's.
I know. I think the thing is, if we both agreed that 50 is sort of where they got in 2010, and if they do well, that's what they're going to get. You've got the advantage here because you're closer to 50 with predicting 60.
But I think
so if they do well, you are absolutely you've won.
I think my 60 is even a little bit conservative because they got the 50 in 2010. Yeah, I don't know what their actual numbers were. We should probably get those up at some point. The actual
it also depends when the next election is because it depends when the next election is because
of course.
If all this talk is rubbish and the next election is in 2022, then
it's a different ball game.
The bet still counts. The bet still counts.
Oh, does it? So when we're here in
Yeah.
2022, still doing these
Yeah.
shitty podcasts.
Yeah, on episode 722, we'll look back to episode 6 and see who's right.
Well, I'm excited for that.
Yeah, me too.
So that's the first prediction. All right, because I think the way
where were we?
All right,
where were we?
Well, the way I'm just going to explain my Lib Dem theory here. The way I'm looking at it is if we do get an election post October the 31st and we haven't left, I think the Lib Dems will pick up probably the same sort of seats that they picked up in 2010. But the Lib Dems' main competitors back in 2010 were the Conservatives, really.
Yes.
And I think that given the Conservative vote will be essentially Brexit based and the Conservative platform will be, I mean, further right is a questionable way of describing it, but you know what I mean. It'll be less sort of classic frothy Lib Demi. I think that they'll be hoping that the Brexit vote will obviously get split between the Conservatives and the Brexit Party, and they can finally snatch in ahead.
Yes.
But who knows?
That's another good point, actually. Now you've said that, is that it also depends on whether there's a deal between the Tories and the Brexit Party.
Which Boris Johnson unequivocally ruled out yesterday, I think.
He did.
So,
yes.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean he will always rule it out. It doesn't mean that there might be another deal proposed that he might... He's turned down that deal, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm talking up my ass. Maybe this is not going to happen. Maybe maybe he has completely ruled it out and it'll never happen. But if, for whatever reason, they come back with maybe a different deal that he likes more, maybe if some different events happen and, it looks like a deal would help him, I don't know. If different stuff happens and there is a deal between them, I think it's going to be more difficult for the Lib Dems because you've got a united sort of Brexit vote. Yeah. So, but
there are two types of electoral pacts that are available. The first one is obviously where they do like the Remain Alliance thing, which is where they all congregate to one party, and the second one is a sort of slightly looser one, which where basically the Conservatives, the Conservatives and the Brexit Party agree to basically either not field candidates or not campaign as hard in certain seats.
Yeah.
But I just struggle first. So I think the first one is very unlikely. I don't think the Conservatives. I really think there is still enough political water between the Conservatives and the Brexit Party for them to even consider really actually joining with the Brexit Party. I mean, that would just be madness. Like that. It's not. It's not conservative in any sense of the word. But I just struggle to see which seats the Conservatives will stand down for to the Brexit Party.
Well, the deal that they proposed was that the Conservatives would step down in, I think it was around 90 seats.
90
I'll check
seats.
that, but I think it's around 90 seats.
No, it's just not going to happen.
But there were specifically the seats where the Conservatives have never won the seat. So they've never won an election there. However, the Brexit Party did win in that area in the 2019 European election, and that's the seats that the Brexit Party wanted the Conservatives not to stand in. And for the Brexit Party to stand in instead. And their thought behind that was, well, they've never voted for the Conservatives, so they've got something against the Conservatives, or it's going to be very difficult for them to win, but they have backed the Brexit Party this year. But I think, as I said in one of the previous podcasts, that European election votes are more protest votes, and there's no guarantees that they'll actually be voted in.
Dude, just thinking, we should probably get back onto the Supreme Court, because we have drifted.
Yeah, how have we got so far
We've gone miles off.
It's
We're
Jack
25 minutes
driving
in. Anyway,
yeah.
So...
Okay.
What were we talking about? So what should we say about the Supreme Court then?
Well, we were saying what we think might happen from now, and I think I gave my answer.
Which was
which means
of course.
yours.
Awesome. Yeah, exactly. Well, right back on track. What a lovely tangent.
Yes.
So I think that Parliament will obviously reconvene. I've heard that it will be 11 o'clock tomorrow, which is Wednesday, whenever this podcast is released. So
PMQs.
yeah, there you go, ready in time.
Yeah.
But apparently, so Boris is at the moment in New York. But apparently,
Is he?
yeah. So Boris is literally today in New York. The verdict, so 10:30 here, which is when the Supreme Court gave their
I was
verdict.
going to say, what time is it?
5:30 in the morning, which is a lovely time to be shat on. It's just great. But apparently he's
Strong
not
coffee
going
for
to
him.
be coming back early, so he won't be on. I mean, that is all subject to change, obviously. But I think that.
Wait, he's not coming back early?
But he was planning to come back tomorrow anyway. So, but he won't be there for 11 o'clock
okay.
in the morning. I don't know.
Well, will he be here for PMQs?
Well, I should find out. I'm not sure exactly what time his flight was. I'm not his secretary, so I don't know what time his flight was.
Well, it depends if he's getting Thomas Cook.
Well, hey,
Hey.
satire.
There we
Love
go.
it.
Boom.
All right, so yeah, and Burko has said tomorrow at 11:30, so it'll probably be 11:30 then.
Right.
But Burko's also said there'll be no PMQs.
Okay.
So
There's
yeah, I've
not
just
gonna
read
be
that. I'm
PMQs.
sorry, I've shat on your dreams there.
That would have been a cracking PMQ.
But you know, what is also the interesting thing was that Boris Johnson yesterday refused to rule out proroguing Parliament again, which it's yeah,
lovely.
exactly. He just come back and prorogue
this was
again.
The thing that I found quite funny as well was that it the government or maybe number 10, something like that. One of the one of Johnson's things.
One of his
came
minions.
back and said that they would respect the verdict, which is kind of, I would have expected to go without saying, like, I'm going to obey the law.
Yeah, the law's lucky. I've
yeah,
decided I'm going to obey it.
Yeah, it's a bit bizarre that they felt the need to say
yeah, that is weird.
It's like, we will respect the ruling. What of the people keeping you in check? You're going to respect that. That's thanks.
Yeah, no,
Cheers.
I think they've treated this with an enormous amount of disdain. It's quite sad, actually. I think the Conservative line on this was basically, we don't think it, but a lot of people it looks to a lot of people like the Supreme Court is made up of Romaniac judges. Ooh.
Although, just to sort of balance that, Johnson was asked, or he might have said this without being asked, but he said that he had nothing against this was prior to the ruling. He had nothing against the Supreme Court. He thinks the Supreme Court are impartial. A lot of people in the world look up to the independence of our judiciary. All of this. So he did make quite a lot of statements prior to this, sort of saying, I'll respect the judgment. I respect the Supreme Court. All of this. So that's kind of unlike things that Trump has said in the US about things that would keep him in check.
I think the Conservatives
isn't doing that. He has said he respects
I think they were very
so.
careful to make sure that they to emphasize that they do think that the Supreme Court's full of neutral judges and they do their jobs fabulously, and they're very competent and all that sort of stuff. But there was a sort of subtext to it, which was that we think this, but voters don't think this. Like it looks a bit dodgy to other people. Not us. We think you're neutral and perfect, but other people are looking at it and think it's a bit dodgy. That was the quasi-Kwarteng line on. He did an interview.
Maybe I'm being naive, but maybe they did actually think that that's what the view of the people were, and they were trying to say to them, it genuinely is independent. Maybe that was coming from a sort of, we actually do think it's independent. We do respect them, and we think the people should too, even though they don't.
Yeah, that's possible.
Maybe that's me being naive. Maybe I don't know if this was the point you were making. I don't know whether I'm just reiterating what you've already said.
I was going to interpret it in the other way, but I think that's a good point to say. There's two ways of hearing this.
Yeah.
But the other sort of maybe a slightly more insidious interpretation. It did sound like a sort of slightly veiled, this isn't a good idea sort of thing. And you have to wonder, just like, if your statement is, we think you're great, but other people don't, what is this sort of implied prescription? Like, what are they suggesting that the Supreme Court should do? You see what I mean? Like, what?
Yeah, I get that view. Yeah, but the obviously the other one is that it's not that they're coming up with this sinister sort of implication. It's that they genuinely think that the people might not see it as independent, and they're trying to say to their supporters, obviously, no, it is. So respect what they say.
Yeah, fair enough.
But no, I think that's fair. I think is there anything more to say about this Supreme Court case? I mean, there's obviously infinite amount to say about this case and the implications, but have you got anything more to say?
I don't think I have much more to say about it. No, I think that's about it. The only other thing was that the stream crashed. You see that? I was trying to watch it live, and it's just apparently down to rain and everyone just jumping on the stream. Didn't work for me.
I was having a nice... Well, I wasn't. I was having a nice breakfast with my house this morning, and I just got a buzz on my phone. I know. So I had a buzz on my phone. But I did actually see on the live sort of text feed saying sorry about the audio. There was something that apparently it was the heavy rain that caused it.
I'm in London, dude. Even getting to the office was absolutely horrible. It was I'm completely soaked through. No, there was some seriously heavy rain going on.
Yeah, so that's probably
sort
why.
of makes sense.
But no, it's certainly an interesting time. Certainly an interesting. So we need to keep up with the news and see what happens because of this. But just one last question for you? Other than Parliament resuming, do you think there are going to be any other sort of more immediate implications? Do you think that Johnson's going to get a slap on the wrist from this, or do you think it's just going to be Parliament's just going to sit and
I think Parliament
give him the usual?
Yeah, I think there'll just be a lot of big speeches in Parliament about this is disgraceful, and it's just gonna be that. And Johnson
was that your posh MP voice?
I think I have a posh enough voice already, but I've gone for a posh MP voice.
Right, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. That was my posh MP voice. But I think you'll basically have a load of that. I think it'll be interesting to see what the reaction is from mostly Brexiteers, and I think that the Remainer reaction is predictable. It's, yay, this is great. I mean, it's actually, I don't think that's the best reaction. I think that makes it feel more partisan. The fact that Remainers are going like, oh, there's a sort of weird worshipping of Lady Hale going on at the moment on my Twitter, which is just slightly annoying. There's loads of the Remainers going off and being like, oh, this is so great. Thank you so much for doing this. And it does make it feel a little bit... I'm just wary that if Remainers worship it, it sounds like...
It makes it seem like they're taking...
It sounds like they've chosen the Remainer side.
And
that there was... Instead of just arbitrarily following law, it sounds like they've gone, okay, we chose the Remainers.
Whereas the reality is that it's got nothing to do with Remainers versus Brexiteers.
Which they did make clear in their statement. But like, instead of that, we should all be celebrating, you know what I mean? The fact that the rule of law has been upheld, which we should have been celebrating the whole time anyway.
Yes.
But and I think so. That was the predictable Remainer reaction. I just think it'll be interesting to see what the Brexiteer reaction is. Like, for example, Nigel Farage calling for Dominic Cummings to be sacked. I don't think any of us saw that coming. Oh, that was almost a pun. Coming.
Wow! I didn't realise that.
Wasn't a great one.
Wow.
We are funny. We should do it.
No one saw that one coming.
Oh no.
Worse.
Okay.
No, but do you think he's still got a job? Do you think he'll still have a job?
I think he probably will. I think I don't really know. I don't really know how they fit together as a pair, though. I don't really understand the Boris Cummings relationship. Do you see what I mean? Like, there seem to be almost two separate things going on. There seems to be Boris's like slightly optimistic blundering going on, and then almost completely separately, there was sort of Cummings' hyper Machiavellian, super disruptive plans kicking off. And they just don't seem to intertwine very much. But hey, who knows?
No, I mean, I don't know a huge amount of what Cummings' role is currently. I know what it was in the Brexit referendum, or the EU referendum, sorry. And I know that he was very influential in that. What he specifically does in government now, I personally don't know. I don't know whether that's...
He's a sort of Alistair Campbell. I think he's Director of Communications.
Is he? Director of Communications. Right, okay.
He basically...
Did he advise the prorogation?
Yeah. Well, according to the documents that were leaked, it was him and Johnson were communicating with Nikki DaCosta, one of those ex-number 10 aides, back in August about whether or not they should prorogue. And I think,
I think he's on thin ice if that's the case.
I do.
I think it's very, very, very thin ice.
I think he's losing good faith with the Conservative MPs, and that will ultimately be the group that bring him down. You know, I think the internal pressure, Johnson won't be able to hold it.
No. And the Conservatives are famously quite cutthroat, not only with their leaders for one, but also their aides. I mean, who was it that was it Theresa May's advisors in 2017?
Exactly.
Craig Oliver.
Nick Timothy as well. Yeah. But exactly, it's the same thing as Alistair Campbell. Like, once they become the story, the norm has always been in politics to fire them because they're often, well, firstly because they often seem as politically toxic at that point, but also because they take up a weird role and they start taking up a weird role in politics as completely unelected advisors, obviously in some sense running the show.
Yeah,
and that's just a politically unsavory look.
And
but I think Boris will keep him for a while. I don't think it will.
And it's like, have you seen The Thick of It?
I love that. I absolutely fucking love The Thick of It.
I love The Thick of It as well. And
that is so good.
It's like when Malcolm Tucker has to go at the end because he becomes politically toxic, and he it's not the same. I mean, if anyone's seen the show, they'll know why it's not the same. But it's not the same. But it's that when a director of communications, as you say, becomes the story, it's not good, and their position becomes untenable quite quickly. So I think I wouldn't. I think, as I say, I'm going to stick with he's on very thin ice. I'm going to,
Should we go for another prediction then? We've already got one prediction.
Okay, fine. We'll do it. So I think he won't go immediately, but if the next time if he's involved in something else or he gives wrong advice again, I think he'll be gone after that.
I think his contract actually ends on October the 31st. I think that was one of the many like hyper Cummingsy things he did. Just say like, I'm only going to need this long. So I think he'll have to be out by that, but I think he'll last till the end of his contract. I don't think he'll be kicked out.
Well, in that case, I agree with you, which makes this whole bet not great.
Oh, shit.
I could say something else if that would make it better for the podcast.
No, I was going to offer the same thing. I was just going to say, fine, he'll be fired.
Okay.
Well, I'll put my money on him being fired, actually, because I wasn't
fine.
100% sure on that one. We may as well have a tally running or something like that.
Yeah.
What about a second prorogation? Do you think Boris will return and just prorogue again?
No,
you don't?
absolutely
All right.
not.
Well, that puts me on the yes then, doesn't it? So.
Oh, you think he will? Okay.
Yes.
Should we go through why?
Well, no, as in, like, if we want to keep some controversy here, I have to go for the opposite side. So I'm going to go yes.
Think of your argument. No. Do you actually think that, though?
I'm not entirely sure, because I think that the fact that he didn't rule it out was, that's a sign.
That is a sign.
But I think he might be able to go for, I think what he'd probably go for if he was going to prorogue again, it'd be a very short one. It'd be a sort of 3, 4, 5 day one where it would basically go over a Conservative conference, maybe, and basically just about give him enough time to do a Queen's speech. And then he could authentically say, or sincerely say, I should say, that he was trying to produce a legislative agenda and not block Parliament. If it was that short, I think he could.
I think that he'll play it safe after this, and I think he might prorogue, but I don't think he'll do it prior to the 31st. Just because. I mean,
God, it would be mental if he did prorogue, wouldn't it? That would just be like, that'd be hilarious.
How could you make the thing is, how could you make the argument that he would be doing it to try and stop debate? Because they've already passed the laws in the statute book saying that if we haven't reached a deal by, I don't know, sometime in October, then
that's true.
He has to seek a extension. So how could you make the argument that he's then proroguing to try and stop debate and stop that law passing? Because it is already there.
That is an important distinction. Yeah, no, I see that. Well, actually, then maybe he has got grounds to prorogue in that case, because that was partly why the Supreme Court ruled the way it did, because it was obviously to stymie Parliament.
Yes. However, having said that, I think, as I say, I still think he'll play it safe, just to make sure that he can't be told off again. And
even if he does have, even if he does have grounds, it looks terrible.
Exactly.
Just to your bog standard reader, like prorogation illegal, prorogation again.
Well, that's exactly, and I think a lot of politics is to do with worrying about headlines, and that the headline, as you say, prorogation illegal, prorogation now, like not good.
I should do those headlines.
Yeah, exactly. The TLDR. Well, when we expand into print media,
broadsheet journalism. Exactly.
We'll put you as the headline writer, Zach.
Yes, that's the dream.
That's what you were in this for.
All right. Well, what else were we going to say?
Labour Party conference.
That I was actually perfect. Definitely should talk about that. So, did you see the whole Composite 13 thing?
Okay.
I should give some context. Sorry.
Yes.
The Composite 13 thing was the motion.
The hands.
The hands. Yes, I'll just do the little context thing. For those who don't know, Labour Party have just had their conference, or I think it's still going. Is it still going?
Yeah.
It's still going, and the way some of it works is they propose a motion, and the other day there were 3 motions. One was the Corbyn's preferred motion, which was that the Labour should basically wait for a while before it decides on its final Brexit policy.
Yeah.
And then they would have a special one-day conference when they did that.
Yeah.
And the second motion, called Composite 13, was suggesting that Labour should unequivocally back Remain.
Yes.
And the third motion was another fudge. It's sort of peripheral to this whole anecdote. But basically, the first motion went through, and the way that they vote is you just have this hall of members, and the members put their hands up, and the chair, who is called something... Is it something Nichols? Yeah, Wendy Nichols. It's Wendy Nichols basically looks at the room and goes, "Oh, there's a majority here for this. That more hands went up for this one than went up for that one."
Yeah.
And so the first one went through pretty uncontroversially, it happened. But then the second one happened, and it was, I mean, if you're looking at the video, it was impossible to tell which one had a majority. Like, there were a lot of hands for both.
Yeah.
You really couldn't tell. And so Wendy Nichols originally said the motion didn't pass, then thought a little bit about it, and then a couple of people to the sides of her, including Jenny Formby, who is Labour's General Secretary and very close to Jeremy Corbyn, sort of tapped on the shoulder, had a little chat with her, and she turned back around and put her hand over the mic, and she turned back around and went, "No, it didn't pass." And there is another way of doing this. Like, if there's this sort of ambiguity, they can do paper votes.
There was
but
talks.
They just decided not to.
There were talks of going to paper votes, and I think, from what I can remember from the video, the conference were... I don't know if they were chanting, but the people sitting in the conference were saying, like, we should go to a paper vote, and the chair basically said no. It's not going to a paper vote. It didn't pass. But she did originally call it, saying that it passed. And then there were definitely people to the side of her, audibly in the mic, going, no, that didn't pass. And they did show a video of the hands, and it did look close. So it's not like...
it was very close.
Yeah. So I think it probably is down to sort of interpret. I mean, it's not down to interpret. There were factually more hands up in one direction. It's just which one it was. And it was very hard to tell.
Thanks for clearing that up, Ben.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's down to interpretation how many hands there were up. But no, it isn't down to interpretation. There was, but it's just figuring out which one, and you couldn't tell. But obviously,
basically it was very unclear.
One view, yeah.
And the proper thing probably would have been to do a paper vote.
Yes.
But it looked like those, especially those who are very close to Corbyn and the leadership of the Labour Party, maybe slightly massaged the chair into calling it not passing. Yeah. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Which did look like a little bit of a stitch up from above, which is not Corbyn's style, really.
Yeah.
And went down pretty badly, actually.
I mean, I'm gonna go with a naive view again, and I'm just gonna offer the counter view, which would be, maybe they did genuinely have different views, because as I say, it was very close, and maybe they genuinely thought it was it didn't pass, the two people to the side of her, and maybe the person in the chair just kind of called it quite quickly.
You are so kind to politicians, your interpretations are so lovely.
I'll admit this now. Like, I am trying to cut people more slack. It's mainly because you and Jack are you are very skeptical of politicians, and I feel like I have to be the one to offer the counter view.
That's why we can get away with the whole sort of like no bias thing, because if you just shit on everyone, it's pretty unbiased. Like, hey,
and
you
and Jack do a good job of being very skeptical of all parties. So I just thought I'd offer the counterbalance and try and So you could see it as just that they called it very quickly, and then once they've had time to think about it, and they've had the advice from the people who sat next to them, who did think it not unanimously, but it kind of definitively went. It failed, so possibly. But again, that's the other interpretation. The possibly more naive view, possibly less skeptical view.
Let's just say kinder. It's the kinder view.
We'll do kinder. Yes, yeah.
A new kind of politics.
Yes.
Lovely.
There we go.
That was a nice little... I like that.
Yes.
Anyway, anything else interesting to report from
there's quite a few. So
Labour conference?
They want to abolish private schools now. That's official policy.
I saw that. As full disclosure here, as someone who went to private school.
Oh, right, okay.
I feel personally attacked. No, it's a policy. Hey, go for it. I think it was funny that originally John McDonnell's policy did seem to be abolish exclusively Eton. Which was...
I didn't see this.
It sounded like that. I do think one of the things about abolishing private schools is that private schools have an average fee of £6,000 a year.
Yeah.
And about 7% of the educated population, so it's about 615,000 kids
Right.
go to private school.
Yeah.
And that comes to about you're basically going to have to find, that's what, £3.7 billion being spent on education.
Yeah.
And the taxpayer would have to cough up probably a similar amount of money if we just abolish private schools.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's an idea, but they're logistically quite difficult. Also, repatriating. I don't think this is bias. I'm not actually against abolishing private schools. I think if you start off with a society, probably not having private schools in the first place would be a good idea. But I do question the principle of sort of repatriating and then redistributing that property. That does seem questionable to me. I think that's pushing.
Well, that was it, wasn't it? He said that they'd seize the assets of private schools, something like that.
I just don't really understand how that would work as well. Like, what are you going to do with all the infrastructure at Eton? Like, where are you going to put it?
It seemed to all be very focused around Eton specifically. The news stories I read were talking like a lot about Eton.
It's because he sits across the chamber from a load of Etonians. And he just wants to, that's probably quite personal at that point.
Yeah. Apparently, just sort of a side note, apparently people who go to Eton supposedly get an extra day off school on the day that an Etonian becomes Prime Minister.
Yes, they do.
But this year apparently it fell on a bank holiday anyway, so they didn't get an extra day.
Yeah.
So
that is such a shame.
Yeah.
God, poor
I just love that fact. I never knew that was the case. I didn't even know they were allowed to do that. But that's don't know.
Have you ever been ever been inside Eton?
No.
It's a completely mental place. It's really quite bizarre. Like I'm posh. I'm like posh. But like for me, like little boys in like that sounded creepy. But like kids in like tailcoats, like walking all over the place with top hats. It's just so weird.
Well, I've heard people who've been, and apparently like they've got like a proper debating chamber, and it's real posh and fancy, and it's like, I mean, a school that has a
Your Yorkshire accent's getting stronger and stronger.
Is it? Well, just for disclosure as well, I didn't go to private school. I haven't seen one. I haven't been in one, I don't think. But I've heard of people, and they had like a specifically built room as a debating chamber, which maybe that's normal. I have no idea. Is that? Did you have that, Zach?
Well, my private school did not have a debating chamber.
They did not have a debating chamber,
unfortunately.
Okay. So that could be an Eton thing.
I think that's probably quite an Eton specific thing, but they do. I mean, also it's a ridiculous place. But I think this is one of those arguments where it's probably would take another whole podcast to get into both the ethics and the logistics of private schools.
Well, just as a bit of a historical context, in the 60s, the Labour Party were quite revolutionary with education. So there was the tripartite education system, which was, I can't remember the three bits, but it was to do with the 11 plus exam and going to like grammar schools, and they sort of they expanded like comprehensive schools. If I'm remembering correctly, and I will check this before I put this out, because if this is wrong, it's not going to be good. But they were quite revolutionary in the 60s, and then they established the Open University as well, which was like a big thing in the 60s, which was trying to get more people into which were trying to get like more people into like university who wouldn't traditionally have gone. And it was doing like university over the air, so you would like listen to radio and watch TV and things, which would have like the lectures on, stuff like that. So they were quite revolutionary in the 60s to do with education, and maybe this is sort of this is like a traditionally very Labour thing to do, I would argue. So it's a very sort of it's harkening back to the Labour Party of the 1960s. So not the first time this has happened, and that was quite a big sort of revolutionary change that they did do successfully in the 60s. So that's quite a traditional Labour thing to do.
On this one point, though, I would just say that I think it would be, in some part, futile, because wealthier parents, even wealthy parents, if you give them that extra £6,000 a year or term or whatever it is, I think it's a term. Is it a term or a year? Anyway, it's a lot of money. If you give them that extra money, they can still afford your tutoring, or you can pay for your kids to go to fancy debate chambers. Once Eton's been renationalised. You can go, you know what I mean? Like, I think that, unfortunately, one of those things, that the playing field is never going to be quite level. But I do think that private schools probably do give a massively unfair advantage. Yeah. And if I start a society again, I don't know if I don't think they would be around. But I just think repatriating them and sort of, redistributing like all of those firstly, the massive amount of assets, that's just phenomenal. And just the logistics behind it are just mental. Hey, who knows?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, one of the things, because I turned LBC on yesterday, and there was the Nigel Farage show or something that was on, so I was listening to that, and he was talking about that, and that they have charitable status, private schools.
Oh, that should be gone, yeah.
So they have that,
the
but
fact
their
that
argument
private schools
is
have
that
charitable status.
it's to do with the fact that a lot of people have like scholarships to go there. So the private schools will offer scholarships to a certain number of people, which means that they won't pay the sort of the same. They won't have to pay to go to, or it'll be subsidised, and I think
reduced amounts.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if that's what gives them the charitable status, but sort of his argument was that there was a lot of people who did get in on merit on scholarships. Therefore, what's wrong with them? It was, I think, from what I can understand, was what his argument was. Like, there's a lot of people going in with scholarships, therefore it's fine. And I think his argument was that it would be dragging the bet. Just because some people are doing well, you shouldn't drag them sort of down. You should try and drag everybody else up, which I think is his argument. So again, just to balance the view that it's not. It's actually,
it's an interesting philosophical question about the intrinsic value of equality. Like, do you want equality if everyone's worse off, or do you want some degree of inequality, but on average everyone being better off? It's an interesting one. I don't really know. I don't think any of us have done enough research on the merits of private school to really get into it.
No, definitely not.
Anyway, so what else is there to talk about?
There were some other. I'm trying to think what the other Labour policies that came out at the conference were.
Some green policies. They went for some green policies. They're growing 1 million trees in hospitals. I think that was one of them.
I didn't see that.
I think there was some other. There were a load of other ones. They wanted to get us to carbon net zero by 2050, which was actually a Theresa May thing, but I think they want to accelerate it. I think, although someone has to check that out for me. But I think, they massive subsidies for electric cars. That was another one. So the whole electric car infrastructure. So lots of charging points, and then interest-free loans for people who want to buy electric cars. Which is that sounds like a pretty good policy. Sounds like a pretty good policy to me.
There was another one that I saw, which was they wanted to cut the average working week to 32
4
hours.
Days? 32 hours. Wow.
32 hours, 4 days. Yeah.
That's 4 days. Yeah.
Yeah. Within 10 years. And they say that the average UK full-time working week currently is 42.5 hours, and the EU average is 41.2 hours. So that would be a significant cut. It'd be a cut of like 10.5 hours a week.
Yeah, that really would be a significant cut.
Yeah,
there's some quite attention-seeking policies. I don't mean that to trivialise them. Like, these are not necessarily bad policies. There has been some academic work done on the 4-day week. I'm not sure.
There has, yeah.
If it's conclusive, we should probably do a video on that at some point. Yes. That sounds like a good topic. But all of it sounds. You know what I mean? They've dropped out some very controversial policies.
Very big policy. Yeah. These aren't like, we're going to cut 2 pence off beer tax. This is like...
Yeah, exactly. It's not boring at all.
No,
it's like,
these are big society changing.
Can you imagine it? We're going to turn Eton into a hospital, build loads of trees.
Yeah.
It's going to be amazing.
I mean, these are like society changing policies. So, I mean, whatever your view on these are, whether it's good or bad, I think it's completely fair to say that if they do all these things, it will change society fundamentally. 4-day working weeks for people, massive subsidies for electric vehicles, the abolishment of private schools. It'd be huge.
I'm just reading it. They also want to. There's currently a ban on onshore wind farms.
Is there?
Which they want to abolish, and they want to unveil the 83 billion state wind farm plan.
Right. That's big.
I do actually know a little bit about this. So actually, how much time has this podcast gone on for? Yeah, people can listen to this. It's fine. It's only 55 minutes. But
it might be cut down. It might be cut down. It might not be 55.
Oh no! Don't cut us down.
No,
come on, Ben.
Yeah, it's fine. I'll put the full thing in this one.
I don't think we've done that much. Have we fucked up that many times?
No, not too much.
I think it's all right. It does the job. But the whole problem with by the way, I'm assuming that climate change is actually happening, and that we need to switch to we need to decarbonize our economy essentially. But the whole problem with stuff like both wind farms and solar panels is that obviously that they only run for so long in the day.
Yes.
And our energy usage is pretty much constant until everyone completely falls asleep, which is well into the non-windy night.
Yeah.
And so you essentially need a storage mechanism. And at the moment, there are no commercially available batteries that work for that sort of thing. So then you do need a second power source. That even if you had like the world's biggest amount of, all the solar panels in the world and all of the wind farms in the world, you do need a second power source that kicks in, assuming that there are still no commercially available batteries. And in fact, having too much of your electricity grid reliant on stuff like wind farms and solar panels is actually a bit of a risk, because obviously on those days when sun's not shining and the wind's not blowing, you need to really switch to a different energy source. And sometimes you actually end up having too much. It happened in Germany 100 times in 2017. They actually had to start selling so that the energy price went negative because they had too much energy coming through wind and solar. Yeah, it happens. And they were selling it for up to, so the commercial price of energy, the thing that you're probably paying is about 15p, it's about 20 cents per kilowatt hour. Yeah. And they were selling it for basically 10. So you were being paid 10 cents per kilowatt hour at one point.
Whoa.
To use energy. It wasn't you personally, it would have been big energy suppliers. So, you're probably your intermediary.
Is that a bad thing?
What, being paid to use energy?
Yeah, I don't see. I thought you were saying like, oh, it's so bad they made so much energy. Like,
well, no, but the energy will just be it won't be used. It'll just be wasted. So like it'll be to the point where like you have all this energy and it will basically.
But it's not like if it was renewable, it's not like they're burning stuff to make that energy and they're just burning it for no reason. It's just coming from what I understand. You're saying it's coming from wind farms, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's more it's about the financial viability of that sort of thing,
right, okay.
Especially for the government.
Yeah,
and the long term. If you end up having to start.
But for the
paying
consumer,
people,
is what I'm saying. Like for the consumer, that's not a bad. Not a bad
no,
deal.
But you would. So it wouldn't happen to you. It'd be like the energy intermediary that supplies your electricity.
It's hard to. I know. I agree. I get that, and it's just hard to. It's hard to feel bad for them.
Yeah. No. True. Exactly. It really is, especially when we have a pretty high energy price.
Yeah.
20 cents per kilowatt hour is not great. But the. Anyway, so that's I think we're going to do a video on this, but little plug for the future: nuclear power, the way forward.
Well, that's what Zach's doing the rest of this week, then.
Oh yes, absolutely. I'm a proper nuclear power advocate. It's just anyway. Let's move on. Should we go? Let's do some politics.
Yes.
What about the Lib Dem commitment to revoke? Should we talk about that?
Yes, absolutely. We were meant to speak about this last week, and I just didn't get around to it. So I said to Jack, "Oh, should we include it in the episode we did, the episode 5, which was." Q&A, and I thought it's a bit weird doing a Q&A and then just tagging a little Lib Dem section in. So I said we'd do it in this one. So yeah, we absolutely need to talk about that. So Lib Dems, they are now unequivocally saying that if they are voted in as a majority government, they will revoke Article 50 and let us remain in the European Union. So this is a very big policy. This is without a second referendum as well, I should add. So we wouldn't. They would just immediately revoke it without asking the people again in a second referendum. So this is big. What's your take on this?
Well, it's interesting because the implication is that the democratic legitimacy afforded by a general election win trumps the democratic legitimacy afforded by a referendum. And this is one of those classic tensions that British politics was just not equipped to deal with. Like, we don't know which comes first. We've always been a representative democracy, and we've always relied on the legitimacy of first past the post, despite the fact that it's exceptionally questionable. But now, if that were to happen, it's an unlikely hypothetical, and I'll get onto that in a second. Yeah. But if the Lib Dems were to win a majority, it would just be like, is it, philosophically speaking, like, is that democratically legitimate thing to do? Yeah. Because you're not going to win. Chances are they're not going to win with 52% of the vote or 53%. They'll win with like 35%, and that will beat all the other parties. And that's just, I mean, you know what I mean? Yeah, you see what I'm getting at.
I remember watching, because there was an interview with Joe Swinson on Good Morning Britain, and I remember watching it and thinking, right, okay, this is where we'll get the justification, because I remember them saying, we'll do it without a second reference. So I thought, right, okay, so how are they going to justify revoking Article 50, stopping Brexit without going to the people? How is that? And it was interesting watching her and her just saying exactly that. We will get our authority to do this through a general election, and the power to do so from the people would be given to us through a general election win. But you're quite right in saying that, which is, even if they do win a majority, the likelihood of them getting a plurality. Is it plurality? I can't remember. But above 50% of the actual vote.
A simple majority of the actual
majority,
vote.
sorry, yeah. The chance of them getting a simple majority of over 50% of the vote is pretty much zero. There's no that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen because you get third parties that get votes. All of this, so they'll probably get 30 to 40% of the vote, which wouldn't be consent from the people specifically. Like that wouldn't be.
Oh, it's so difficult 50%. To speak about, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because in normal political times, you would consider that. You'd consider a general election win just like, especially one if you got 40% and a majority of 50 seats, you'd be like, that is complete legitimacy. Like, I'm allowed to do whatever I want from here on in. But when it sort of has that tension with the, a referendum, it's just we basically haven't really figured out what that means.
I think I should probably qualify what I said, which was more what I meant more was that doesn't, the 35 to 40% that they would get in an election if they were to get a majority wouldn't exceed the number of people who voted for Brexit in the 2016 referendum. Is what I wouldn't expect it to be more than that. Which, I mean, that is one way of looking at it. That it wouldn't be. It wouldn't trump that for that reason. But then again, the thing you've got to bear in mind is that it is a more recent poll. So you would be asking people more recently, and it's a better reflection of people's attitudes now and what they think now about it than it was 3 years ago, considering everything that's happened. So that's the flip. That would be the flip argument in my view, which would be that although it might not be a specific sort of direct, it wouldn't trump direct democracy necessarily. You could make the argument that it is a better reflection of people's attitudes now, and that's why it trumps it. So they're in my view the two sort of ways of looking at this.
Nonetheless, we can both agree that we just fundamentally British politics has not sorted out how it deals with direct democratic results.
No, and this is and that's a really good point, because then if it is to do with the recency of the and that matters, the timing matters, and the fact that you're saying that it's legitimate because it's a better reflection of people's attitudes now, then you get into the whole territory of, well, how often can we ask people their opinion on one issue in a referendum? Because
hopefully never again. Jesus Christ, like just years of crap.
Well, we asked people in 1975 what they thought of the EEC, and they said to remain. And we've all kind of agreed now that, like 4 decades later, just about 4 decades later, that it's fine to ask that question again. So we've all kind of agreed. And I don't see anybody saying that 2016 referendum was illegitimate because we've asked that question before, or if they are, not that many people. So we kind of have agreed that we can ask the same question twice across, 4 decades apart. But how many times can we ask it? Can we ask it 2 decades apart? 1 decade apart?
At what point
a few
in time?
Years apart? Like that's something that you're quite right. We haven't sorted as a democracy yet how frequently you can ask the same question in a referendum. So is 3 years apart? Because what they're saying is that you would effectively use a general election as the referendum, and that in getting a majority, that is given them that. But are those 3 years? Is that okay? Like, have we agreed as a democracy that is okay? So we don't know. These are all questions that don't have answers, and I'm not sure we'll ever have answers. Our democracy, as you're right, we're not equipped to deal with it yet.
Yeah, you're right. So there was both, obviously, the sort of time component. So obviously a lot of time has passed. But obviously, it's worth pointing out that the EU is a different beast to what it was in 1975. We now have the euro. And it's further on. So those are two conditions that have changed. But back to the original thing about actually, I'll say one more thing on referendums. I am dreading what I see as a reasonably likely outcome, which will be some sort of Snp Labor Coalition. If Labour do well and better than it looks like they're about to do in a general election,
right?
And the SNP will demand that as the sole condition for their support in government, they want a second Scottish independence referendum. And I am dreading another 3, 4, 5 years of implementing that sort of thing. You know what I mean?
Okay, can I just qualify your opinion here? Like, you're dreading it because you don't want...
No. I have no opinions on the merits of Scottish independence. Although we did a video on it, so another plug there.
Yeah.
And there was some interesting economic stuff at the time. I don't know if we did actually do a video on Scottish independence a while ago.
Okay, I'll have to watch that.
I know. I haven't been watching listen to podcasts. You didn't.
Yes, exactly. We're both as bad as each other. Yeah. Lead writers.
There was some really interesting economic analysis at the time when Scotland had all those North Sea oil reserves about how an independent Scotland would have one of the strongest currencies in Europe at the time. and it was actually hidden by the Conservatives because they commissioned the report. And it was finally uncovered by a Freedom of Information request by the SNP, I think, in the 2000s. So, hey.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And it was, yeah. Anyway, so, should we go back to the Lib Dem Manifesto Committee?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we've just talked about that and the fact that, obviously, there are some democratic tensions.
There definitely are. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. If it was to come to pass. But there was obviously, and I'm sure everyone knows this, there was obviously a sort of subsidiary aim to that policy, which is just that they know that it will probably get them some votes. You know,
Yes.
like it's both maybe a sincere policy and an electoral advertisement.
As I said on the last, I've said this before as well, but that we're getting we've got two polarized parties now on the Brexit divide. So we have the most Remain option, which is to revoke Article 50 and just we don't do Brexit, which is the Lib Dems policy, and we have the hardest of Leave, which is Brexit Party. We will leave without a deal. We're leaving. We're doing it. You know, we're not doing it with a deal. So we've got a party at the very Remain end of the sort of dichotomy of of Remain and Leave, and then we've got Brexit Party at the other end, and the traditional parties, Labour, the Conservatives, fit somewhere in the middle. And now the Lib Dems are committed to that. We have got that, and it's whether the public are polarised enough to back either end of this sort of this spectrum, or whether they're going to go with the traditional parties in the middle, which are both sort of advocating for a different deal, but they both advocate for a deal nonetheless. So it's sort of where the public want this. And now that, as I say, now the Lib Dems have advocated that, we do now have representation from all across this sort of Brexit divide. And it just all depends on what the public want now. It's to do with how adamant the public are that they want they want to leave quickly, or whether the public want just to remain, or whether they're happy to wait it out a bit more and try and hash out a deal. So yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see, but that is one sort of repercussion from this.
In a way, it's quite beautiful actually to watch democracy actually sort of working in action. Like,
Yeah.
I say what you want about the Brexit Party, but they are, they do represent a section of the electorate, and they popped up and they're successful, and that's a nice thing to see. It's a nice thing to see democratic accountability.
And same
really
with
working.
the Liberal Democrats as well. Say about the Liberal Democrats, but they have now given the voters complete choice. The voters now have complete choice on that Brexit spectrum of what they want. And I don't think that they're going to unanimously decide something. I don't think that we're going to get a majority government. I don't think that the public are going to turn around and go, yep, we all want this option. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that we're going to be, a hung parliament, and we're going to have to see some negotiation take place. But you're right, it is refreshing to see that we do have proper choice. Because we went through a period, didn't we, in British politics, of the parties sort of converging in the early 2000s with New Labour and the Conservatives, which that was like a period where the parties were getting closer together, and now this new sort of divide's taken place, and they're heading their own separate ways, sort of.
Yeah.
And maybe not the traditional parties, but parties in general. So yeah, we'll have to see.
I think the country has yet to really figure out like how it deals with it. But I still think fundamentally, you'd agree? Fundamentally, it's probably quite a good thing.
Yes, fundamentally, it's good for democracy. With caveats.
We're using some big words here. It's confusing. One last thing. So I think, what have we said? So the Lib Dems commitment to, I think it's really interesting because it can be interpreted in a number of ways. So obviously the first one is that it's a manifesto commitment that they will implement if they get a majority. The second one is that it's some sort of advertisement.
Yeah.
I think there is another two ways of interpreting it. I think that the third one is it could just be a general prescription about what they think should be done, like just what they think should happen as the outcome. Yeah. Which is sort of similar to the manifesto commitment. But I think what even maybe is the most likely way, what's the best way of putting this? Maybe just the best way of understanding it is that it is in some part a negotiating tool.
Yes.
Or negotiating stance, because manifesto commitments in the age of coalition governments are not the same. Like they do sort of, you're basically setting out, you're maybe anticipating a coalition and knowing that if you set out your most extreme position,
exactly,
you can be seen to compromise on a second referendum, let's say, once you get into, and which is actually maybe what you were happy with all along. And I do think that will be interesting in the future, sort of seeing how parties deal with the prospect of coalitions and how that will affect their manifestos, and whether or not knowing that they will in some part have to be seen to compromise will force them into pitching the most extreme versions of their policies.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
It makes a very different calculation if you're a guy writing a manifesto. Like, this is what I actually want, but I have to be, you know what I mean? You have to sort of calculate ahead of time.
Yeah. And that could be I didn't even think of that, but that's a very, very good point, that it could be that they do want a second referendum and that they're laying out an even more sort of Remain stance on this, in order to seem like they're compromising. And that could be, because that's Labour's policy, I think, which is that they want a general election first and then a second referendum. And they could be, if they're angling for a coalition with Labour possibly, they could be made to seem like, we're compromising on that, and make them seem like they're compromising. So that could be it. But no, it's a big thing from the Liberal Democrats, and I think we've spoken. Oh God, my chair's squeaky. I think we've spoken quite a lot about that. So I think that's everything. I don't think I've got anything more.
No, I think we've finally cleared out the lot.
Yeah.
What were those weird questions you wanted to ask me at the end?
Yeah. Okay, so we'll do the little music here.
I can sort of hear you giggling.
Okay, so there was two.
God.
Okay, so the first one was breakfast. The question that we had was, what would the TLDR team have for breakfast to either celebrate or mourn Brexit, I think was the wording. And me and Jack had very disappointing answers, because neither of us are breakfast people, neither of us like eggs, and I'm a vegetarian.
Yeah, Jack,
so
you don't like eggs?
Yeah.
What? Where are you? Okay, well, you guys are both wrong, like nothing else.
I said, and can I just say, my prediction was, I said on the last podcast, my prediction was that you were a breakfast guy. I have the opinion of you that you're going to be a big breakfast guy. You're going to come out with this massive English breakfast, I think.
I don't know how to take this as if it's a compliment, but it's a very good guess. I have it really hard because I tried to do. We're just going to get into this. This is fucking dull for anyone.
Go on. No,
so feel free to just ignore this. Anyone on the podcast. Yeah. Basically, I committed to intermittent fasting for a while. I don't really know why. I'm engaged, and my fiance was doing it, and I had to sort of cut down breakfast. But I found the nice thing in the world, which is you intermittent fast. You're allowed to eat about like midday, 1, something like that. Yeah. I go for like a massive breakfast at midday, sort of 1. Breakfast is just the best meal of the day.
Okay.
And I would be. You're right. I'm definitely an eggs guy. I would probably be your whole English breakfast. I'm really not actually that fussy. I do also love American style pancakes. So that is a, and there's a great recipe. Jamie Oliver's got a great recipe on that, guys.
Okay.
But so that would probably be me. Yeah, I would, and a really nice coffee would be a flat white.
Well, yeah, Jack wanted me to title this episode Zach is a big breakfast boy, spelt B-O-I, because we were that confident that you would be. But somehow I think that might be a bit misleading to what the actual majority of this podcast is about.
Do you know Jack doesn't drink hot drinks?
What?
Yeah,
he failed to mention this in the last podcast.
Wait, because I've given him so much shit for it. He knows he's weird. He doesn't drink any hot drinks. Completely mental. Completely mental.
Right. We may disagree on the breakfast thing, but he doesn't. How does he function? I know he said. Well, do you know what? He hinted at it because there was a question about what was it, Coke or Pepsi? And he was talking about that, and I think he said he was drinking one at the time of the podcast, which was at like 11 in the morning, and I was like, it's a little bit early to be
so weird
on the fizzy drinks, but it must be because he doesn't have a hot drink in the morning for the caffeine boost, so he has
I know normally he actually just has water, like he's a big water guy,
right?
But, stay hydrated, guys. Like
I'm I probably drink
announcement.
I probably drink enough tea for 2 people, just generally. I drink like a lot.
So
of tea.
Yorkshire.
No, but very yes. Specifically Yorkshire tea.
I'm a big tea guy as well. Oh, I'm a big tea. Anyway,
yes. So that was what I was one. And it turns out we were right. You are a big breakfast boy.
Or maybe last point on the breakfast. Sorry, I'm getting too into this. This is way more fucking interesting than politics.
Yeah,
you ever had that like baked eggs shakshuka stuff?
I don't know what half those words mean.
Oh, shakshuka is just a Turkish word. You don't like eggs, so you wouldn't have had it. It's like these eggs that it's just delicious. You bake in sort of onions and cumin and a big tomato sauce, and you have it on like toast. It's next level. Anyway, let's move on.
Okay.
I could speak about this for hours.
It was a great. Honestly, I loved doing the last one. Like answering all the questions was good fun. The next one was more of an embarrassing one, and I did actually say that I was going to get some sort of shit from you in this one because I didn't know and Jack didn't know, but he's not on this one, so you can't give him any. So basically, we were asked what we study. We were asked if anybody studies journalism at university. Now we knew that you didn't, and we knew that. I know that I don't. But we.
Jack fucking no.
Well, he said philosophy. And
yeah, I do. I study philosophy.
Yeah,
exactly.
we agreed that you did do philosophy, but I was torn because I thought you did economics at some point. Was that did you do economics at A level? Was that where I was getting confused?
No, I did maths at A level. But not
where
quite economics.
Where did I get that you know about economics from then?
I do like a little bit of it. So I do a bit of reading. Economics at the moment. Economics and like nuclear power. I f***ing love nuclear power. Those are sort of
it's a weird combination.
Side hobbies.
It's a weird skill to have.
Got to get into it. It's great. No, I study philosophy. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Did you tell everyone what you studied?
Yes, I did.
Study.
Yeah. Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So not.
Did you tell them where you study?
I did actually. Yeah, I did.
Oh, I should probably say I study at UCL. Then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I get to come into the office.
You're gonna have people messaging you now saying, "I'm from UCL."
Second year student, philosophy at UCL.
Yeah.
That's me. You can come find me. That's be a bit weird. But please don't, actually. I'm not ready for that.
Just search out the one with the posh voice. It'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah, just who went to private school.
Yeah.
Actually, about all of us at UCL went to fucking private school. Like,
okay, it doesn't narrow it down.
Yeah, it really doesn't.
No.
But yeah, so that's what I do.
They were the two sort of questions that we needed to consult you on. So anybody that's listening to the last podcast and was disappointed because you didn't get Zach's answers, you now have them. There you go.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I hope there's loads of you who are fucking disappointed I wasn't there.
Big Zach fan base.
Yeah,
that's the one.
Anyway,
okay.
all right, I think that's probably it. I think we probably shouldn't title it Breakfast Big Zach Boy.
Probably
whatever
not a
the
good
f-
idea.
It was going to be. No.